As you all know, the topic is world-class universities and universal higher education, with the rhetorical question at the end, can we have it all? So it's important and also very interesting the way I see it, also because we have a very interesting lineup of speakers, one who comes from the education management and administration side. Then we have from the private sector, representing organization which has been looking at education in depth, but they represent a totally different sector. And then we have a very senior and experienced academic who is going to give his point of view. So before I introduce the speakers, because so many new people have connected with us today, in addition to the participants that normally connect with our policy dialogues, I want to give just a two-line introduction to Education Forum Sri Lanka. It's an independent entity. It's just about 10 to 11 months old. It was formed by, as I said, by Dr. Sujatha Gamage and myself. Sujatha is a senior researcher, an experienced researcher at Learn Asia. She's also an experienced policy analyst, and you've been probably seeing her writings a lot in the newspapers and elsewhere. The aim of EFSL, being an independent and apolitical body, is to facilitate policy reforms through engagement, to dialogue, discussion with academics, professionals, and others with experience and expertise in the education sector. As most of you would know, in Sri Lanka, as of now, and for many, many decades, since many decades ago, education policy making has been more or less the prerogative, or the ownership has been taken almost entirely from the government side, with the National Education Commission, the Ministry of Education, National Institute of Education, and so on. So there is, or we identified a niche where a body which can contribute towards policy making, contribute towards diverse views on certain key topics connected to education policy formulation can be represented. So hence the birth of EFSL. So we've had a range of policy dialogues in the last several months, starting from early childhood education. Now today we have reached higher education and university education. So with that, let me quickly introduce the speakers. So we have starting Mr. Anura Dissanayake, who is a very senior and experienced officer from the Sri Lanka Administrative Service. But he's held many prestigious positions, not just in the administrative service, but also connected to education. And I have had the privilege of working with him many decades ago. He's been in the Ministry of Education, and until 3 days ago, he was the Secretary to the Ministry of Higher Education. So he's going to give us an overview of funding and management of the higher university and the higher education sector. Then we have Drs. Ruwan and Drs. Niresh Eliatamby. They represent Cogitaro, a consultancy firm, and they've been very active, engaged in writing, talking, representing views on higher education, like online education, university rankings, unemployment of graduates, and ragging. So Dr. Ruwan is a digital architect who's speaking to us from Malaysia. Dr. Niresh with the MBA and LLM, he's based in Colombo. So they are going to talk to us on this very interesting topic of global rankings and how Sri Lanka universities can be or cannot be positioned in that context. Then we have a very accomplished scholar and a researcher, a highly recognized academic, Professor Veranja Karunarathna. He is a senior professor at the University of Peradeniya and also the chair of SLINTEC Academia, also the chairman of the Intellectual Property Commission. So he's had a wealth of experience and understanding on all the topics connected to science and research and everything else. His input to us will be on research and graduate education today. Once the three speakers make their presentations, Dr. Sujatha Gamage is going to respond to all three and give her input and do a synopsis of what she feels in respect to what they presented. So basic housekeeping rules are the same as in any policy dialogue via Zoom. We have the raise hand signs for anybody who wants to ask a question when the discussion starts. The discussion will start in a few minutes' time. And whenever you want to make a comment, just use the chat. We aim to start the discussion at 3:45 and go on till about 5 o'clock, because each speaker will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes for their presentation, and Sujata will use again the same time for the sum up. So before Anura starts, I just want to leave a few thoughts with you. I'm sure these will be captured in all the discussions that we're going to hear. Just that Sri Lanka has, as you know, 15 state-funded universities and around 20, I think, higher education institutes. But all of these actually cater to just about 10% of the post-advanced level students. It's a very small percentage. So we have a large group that don't come into the equation, and as Sujata always says, they're off the radar. Then again, we have the Sri Lanka higher education system, which has a very negligible input from the private sector. But we have 40% of the education budget devoted to these 15 universities. So then it's a question, should it be less, should it be more? Because we don't have private sector contribution, we have mainly state sector university education, but eating a huge chunk of the budget, leaving just about 50% for 10,000 schools. So 40% for 15 universities, 50% for 10,000 schools. Just a point for you to reflect on. Then we have this statement, I'm really directly quoting from Sujata's article that appeared in the FT recently, where we're talking about the importance of having 360,000 kids who enter grade 1 and their preparedness for the world of work. Of course, some of them drop out, but how prepared are they for the world of work? And then when we talk of the world of work, we talk of employability, 21st century learning skills, getting ready for the fourth industrial revolution and so on. But just 50% of the A-level students only gain entry to university through STEM-related subjects, which are considered the ones that are most employment generating. The balance go into arts and humanities. The point connected to this, Anura, you may remember this from your Ministry of Education days, out of the 10,000 schools, we have just about 2,891 schools which have advanced level classes. And from that 2,891, only about 1,040, less than 50%, only about 1,040 offer science and maths. So that explains why only 50% of university entrants are geared to study the subjects which we would consider as employment friendly. With that, I will pause, and I very warmly welcome Mr. Dissanayake to make his input and to contribute towards this discussion. Thank you very much. Andrew, you can unmute. Please unmute your mic.
Yep. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Peradeniya, for inviting me for this educational forum in Sri Lanka. This very timely topics, that series of topics that the forum is conducting, and today's topic is relevant to the subject area that I was responsible until day before yesterday. And however, even though I'm now given the responsibility of the country's water management sector, I still remain the chairman of the presidential task force appointed by His Excellency on Sri Lanka's education affairs. So let me just, while agreeing with the opening remarks of Dr. Peradeniya, the very reason pointed out, forming this Sri Lanka's education affairs task force to see the way forward to meet the demands and supply of human resources into local and global markets. So with that, if I'm just making few updates on the numbers, You are very correct on the state universities. Numbers of in-state universities are 15, and the intake of university students up to last year was 32,000 approximately. And then non-state higher education institute, that is also comes under a different arm of the higher education ministry of working with the private sector. There are 21 institutions. They cater approximately 24,000 student intake annually. So that combines approximately 50,000 to 51,000 between, it depends on the supply and demand and various other things. Approximately 50,000 is doing their higher education in either from the state or the state-owned privately managed institutions like NSBM, NIBM, and SLITEC, and then all the private institutions. If we really take the employability of these graduates who are coming out, the non-state higher educational institutes numbering up to 21. These universities products are approximately 90 to 95% employable, whereas state universities outputs are not reaching that much, leaving alone, especially the students, approximately 50% students who are following arts related subjects, that is numbering to 16,000 out of 32 intake. The employability varies from university to university, leaving the highest number in the Colombo university's graduates, still that remains 45% are employable. That means, balance 50%, 55% is the state responsible to take them subsequently and get them employed in somewhere, whether it's a direct impact on their learning or whether their desire has been considered. And if you go out from Colombo, if you go to Jaffna University, the employability rate among the art stream is it's for less than 30%. So it also gives, there's a the disparity of access to job markets, and then availability of job opportunities in outside Sri Lanka, outside Colombo. So given all this context, the presidential task force appointed by the president comprised of state university heads, and then private public sector, private university, and then private education sector, and then missionary schools, and our entire community. This task force is fed with 5 core groups, and altogether comprising of around 280 educational specialists covering different areas have been working to come up with a roadmap for 2030. As we know, the president had declared next decade as a skills decade, thinking that to minimize the present unskilled workforce of 30% to reduce down to 10%. If you say take the last labor force survey, that is 2018, based on 2018 data, 2019 labor force survey came out very recently. According to that survey, 30% of our young people who are leaving the secondary and higher education joining the market labor force as skilled about 30% and semi-skilled 40%, and that leaves 30% are just joining the market without any type of a skilled within them. So that number, that is numbering to significant per year. So now way forward, the government thinking for next 10-year period is to increase the university intake in the state university system up to 60,000, that is doubling the present number by increasing the number of additional 10 universities in districts, focusing on very market-based, demand-driven courses that these 10 universities are comprised of faculties of engineering technology, faculties of information communication technology, and faculties of biotechnology. So these universities will take 15,000 intake from beginning of 2024 academic year onwards. And the state university system will increase, the present system university will increase the capacity up to 45,000, so that numbering into 60,000. So, and as you all know, the statistics of examination education sector, 2023 advanced level will release approximately 240,000 students who are qualifying with A-levels as against 180 now, because we all know that that all these openings of the countries after the conflict, there's the student intake has been increased. So that means out of 240,000 who are coming out from the school system with A-level qualified, the state universities will absorb 60,000, means still that's 25%. So which leaves us a room for supporting the private sector and giving more incentives and opportunities for the private sector also to take active part, and offering market-driven courses, so that the local and international job opportunities will open for these young graduates who are coming out from the school system, university system. And to encourage that, state has proposed and implemented several initiatives, while state universities will be supported to increase their capacities and faculties where the more employable graduates are coming out, and then supporting all these the faculties of arts, liberal arts related faculties, to change their syllabi and then introduce some of the courses or the programs which will have marketable job skills that that they will be employable. And the private sector support initiative was commenced from last year. The state is providing a loan facility for students without any interest, and then a grace period of 7 years to repay. And we started offering that facility from last year, and then this year's intake, we have awarded 5,000 such opportunities for the students who are coming out from the school system, who intend to get their studies in the private sector higher education institutes. And then from this year's budget proposals, the task force has proposed, and then the Treasury has agreed in policy to expand that opportunity to increase the number of scholarships or the interest-free loan scheme to 20,000 students annually. So that will help further for our students to join the private sector universities, so that the target of increasing the private sector university numbers from 25,000 to 40,000 within next 5-year period. So these are the basic outline that has been proposed by the Presidential Task Force co-group on higher education, which is comprised of members of SLANC and members of UGC and members of SLASCOM and chambers and all, so that, so these are the basic, the major way forward that we are proposing to make sure the opening up opportunities for higher education, increasing the number from present level to almost double. And there's another decision has taken by the cabinet to see and creating a international education zone in the suburb of Colombo, that is in the area of Horana, creating a 700-acre property area dedicated for international universities to establish their facilities here. But it is not aiming for the local students, but to capture the growing markets of South Asian markets of Bangladesh, Indonesia, and then Pakistan, etc. So that that project will be a private-public partnership. The initial concept had been approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, and we are now working on marketing or the funding formula. So that will help us to bring some of the international universities to Sri Lanka, so that it will help to exchange faculties, and then increase the international student exchanges, and then it will, and then creating a competition within the country for local universities also to put their ranks in international ranking. So these are the basic planning process which have taken place during last 4-month period under the Presidential Task Force.
Anura, just everybody will have a round of questions from your presentation, but are you going to say anything about the funding status of the universities before you wind up, or you want to?
Okay, yeah, okay. I was just mentioning the last cabinet decision which took place 4 weeks ago of establishing high-tech 10 universities in districts where the national universities are not located. And these universities are set up in 10 districts, which places have been identified, the land had been identified, and these the investment for these 10 universities have been agreed in principle by this Asian Development Bank, and the feasibilities funding had been received by the Asian Development Bank, and the UGC is now conducting the feasibilities of setting up of these universities, and where these universities will offer, like I mentioned, these market-driven courses on these 3 faculties, and then the limiting these district universities for 1,500 students intake per university, and these universities are only restricting first 3 years for the students coming up from particular districts, because we have to the accommodation and all these things have to become follow up subsequently. So that investment is $50 million US dollar investment is earmarked and is pledged in principle by the Asian Development Bank, and then ongoing funding for next 4 years on the university system is we are now investing in 5 universities of the setup of technology faculties. That's for its funding assistance from ADB and World Bank, and that investment is approximately 110 million within next 3-year period. So altogether, there'll be from the state university sector that 150 million US dollar investment is earmarked, and some have been implemented, and the results or the facilities will be ready from 2023 intakes to the university system.
Thank you very much, Anura, for keeping to time. And your question.
Can I, please?
Yes.
I have a clarifying question. Can I? Yes. Hi, Anura. Sujata. Hi.
Yes.
My question is, the technical, there was in the manifesto I saw that the technical colleges will be upgraded, or the students will be given degree paths. They'll be upgraded to technological universities. Is that part of this plan? I mean, this 20 aren't we going to have these technical college students being able to move on to degrees, or is it totally new apart from these technical colleges?
Actually, these 10 high-tech district universities are different from transforming these vocational education institutes into university colleges. So these are actually, this is now. Thank you for questioning, asking that important question. As we know, there are 100 and nearly different ministries are conducting various courses on vocational stream, and then when we make the survey, in 180 divisional secretariat areas, approximately 202 institutions are offering some sort of NVQ qualification for school leavers, starting from NVQ 3 up to NVQ 5, that is higher education diploma. So the vocational or the vocational training segment will be transformed into one Tibet concept. So where any vocational training institute will work under Sri Lanka qualification framework, and then it will not differ from one institute to another. And these institutions will be renamed as university colleges. So these the students who are coming and studying certificate courses, diplomas, and high diplomas in these university colleges located in each divisional secretary area, and if they wish to continue their studies up to university, they will be linked to Univotech. So that's another line of.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Anura. Please keep your questions written down to ask him during the discussion period. I would like to invite Drs. Ruwan and Niresh now. I think you have some slides. You could kindly share your screen and please start with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tara. That was a very interesting news, a lot of interesting news from our secretary, Mr. Anura Dissanayake, who unfortunately is taking up another post, but he is going to be involved with education, thankfully. Yes, so Dr. Ruwan and I have been doing some studies on the international aspect, among other aspects. And so I'm very glad to hear from Mr. Anura Dissanayake about the Horana zone for international universities. That's very good news indeed. Let me share the slides that we have prepared. Okay, there we go. Right. So looking at the international aspect, globally, tertiary education or university education is one of the most lucrative and fast-growing industries in the world. It's about $1.9 trillion turnover annually. To show you the amount of growth, in 1998, there were 89 million university students globally enrolled. And by 2017, there were 200 million. So this is very fast growing indeed. And our governments, many governments over the past 25, 30 years have recognized this. and tried to steer the country towards a knowledge hub. I think during Dr. Tara's time also that was mooted. And then, of course, the Mahinda Chintana document has Sri Lanka to become a knowledge hub as one of its 5 pillars. So that's quite a lot of emphasis on the country looking at international education. So the good news is that we in South Asia are in one of the fastest growing regions for university education. Other regions are the Middle East, which is right next door, and of course Latin America and Africa, which are a bit further away and are not relevant. Let me go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the trends in world rankings and why world rankings are important, and how Asian universities are doing very well and moving into the top 200 and the top 100. And then my colleague Dr. Ruwan will be talking about the nitty-gritty of how to improve the rankings of Sri Lankan universities. And he will be taking as an example the University of Malaya, which has done very well in the rankings over the last decade or so. So now, why are rankings important? Well, there are a lot of diverse opinions as to the quality of rankings. But the fact is that when you are marketing a product, and this is what it is, university education has become a product, a global product, and you need to market it, and you need to have some publicity, and you need to show your standards. That's the way you can attract international students. These 3 main rankings are widely used. There are other rankings as well, but these 3, the QS and the Times Higher Education and the ARWU. So these rankings are used quite frequently, and they are used by foreign universities which are marketing in Colombo. When you look at the Sunday education classifieds, you see universities saying we are top 100 or we are top 50 UK university, something like that. So because that's the way you sort of market yourself. Now getting back to how lucrative this can be, and the reason I'm focusing on that, how lucrative it is that education costs money and the state can't always provide. So although Mr. Anura has certainly tried. So at the moment, in the United States, there are over 1 million foreign university students. That's of course the largest market, but that just shows you how many foreign students are willing to travel a long way to get this type of education. So, and it is such a big industry that it practically subsidizes the American students in those universities and subsidizes research, brings in a lot of money. In fact, recently when, I think last month, President Donald Trump tried to evict the foreign students in the US who are, unfortunately, due to COVID, many of those universities are not conducting physical classes and they're doing online classes. And when this policy was announced by the White House, both Harvard and MIT within a week filed action in court to prevent it on the grounds that they themselves would lose out financially in a huge way if all their foreign students are sent home. And of course, very fortunately, the White House dropped that idea. And I think Harvard and MIT had made a very strong case as to why that should not be done. Right. So actually, when you look at the global industry, universities can be and should be revenue centers rather than cost centers. So they can earn a lot of revenue, for the country, which is what the successive Sri Lankan governments have recognized. And also, thankfully, the present government as well, as Mr. Anura Dissanayake pointed out, with the foreigner zone. So that's all wonderful news. Now, when you look at see here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So QS rankings, when you look at, now by looking at QS rankings, we could look at the other ones as well, but we don't have time. Let's look at QS. You see, of course, in the top 100, there's quite a few US and UK universities, and then you have other countries. Now, the interesting thing here is that there are 6 Asian countries which are represented here. That's mainland China, South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and Taiwan. So that's very interesting. And let's look at the next slide. Sorry, there we go. So when you look at the number of Asian universities in the top 100, look at, back in 2004, there were only 14, and then it sort of stagnated for a few years there. And take a look at where we are now. I mean, that where 26 universities of the top 100 are Asian. So this is very good news for countries like Sri Lanka, because what it shows is that Asian universities as a whole have the capability to get up there into the top 100. And that's where, once you get into the top 100 or even the top 200, suddenly, your marketability increases tremendously. So as long as your country doesn't have universities in that range, it's more difficult to market not just those universities, but also the country as a whole, because you need to show that your own education system, your own universities are of a high caliber. So now let's look at, from each Asian country, you can see China in 2004, they had only 2 universities which were in the top 100. And today they have 6. And then Hong Kong had 3 in 2004, and today they have 5. India had 1, and then in 2005 they had 2, but those 2 have dropped out of the top 100. So that shows you that as universities move in to the top 100, it's just as easy to fall out. Japan is very consistent, around the 4 or 5 university mark. South Korea, tremendous improvement. They've gone from 0 top 100 universities in 2004 up to 5 in the present year. Malaysia, interestingly, they had 1 university in the top 100 in 2004, and it dropped out. And for about a decade, it was out, and now it's come back in. And my colleague, Dr. Ruwan will be talking about that quite a bit. Singapore, very consistent. They have 2 universities which are very high up there, including the National University of Singapore, which is usually in the top 10 or just outside the top 10. And Taiwan has 1 university now. Okay, so that's quite a few. 26 out of the top 100 are Asian. We have actually tracked each university and how they have either done better over the years or gone down. And the East Asian universities certainly have improved, whereas the Indian ones have not done so well. Right. So you will see there at the bottom, Indian Institutes of Technology and Indian Institute of Management have dropped out. Right. So now I will hand over to Dr. Ruwan, my colleague, who's speaking from Kuala Lumpur, and he will go into a bit more nitty-gritty, and I'll add a few comments as he goes along. Ruwan?
Yeah, thank you, Niresh. So thanks for having me. There's a couple of things I want to highlight on this slide. So if you look at it, the previous slide, Singapore, right? So Singapore, they scored the overall QS because this example is based on the QS ranking. So I'm touch upon the QS, right? So there are criteria and etc. So if you closely look at the Singapore, for instance, right? So they are very standard, and I mean they're consistent, right? Then the 11, the ranking is 11. 11 is 91 point. The overall score 91.5. So then their reputation, academic reputation out of 100, 99.7. And even if you look at it, the Japanese universities, they're consistent, and one of the university from China, the Fudan, they are not even in the 100 starting. I mean, this ranking starting 2004. There was 195. Then 2020, they are top 50. So that's the interesting one. Then again, if you look at it, the Nanyang University and the NUS, they are average above 90. Only two criteria, they are below 70s. It's one is the citations, and the other one is the international students. So that hits to 72.9 and the 71.4. So this is something interesting to look at it. So move to the next slide. Yeah, so QS assessment criteria. Yeah, state here. Yeah. So back to this QS assessment criteria. So if you look at it, the academic reputation here, 30%. But recent past, it's changed to them. I mean, 2 months back, they changed it to 40%. It's no longer exists the 30%. So, and the employer reputation now is 20. That's been until 2020. Ranking assessment is 20. Now it's dropped to 10%. Then the faculty ratio and faculty ratio has become a 20%. So what I'm trying to say here, it's always changing the statistics here. So somebody's have to monitor this. Somebody's have to work for it. So what's going on in the ranking? And if you look at it closely in Malaysia, in the past, they were disappeared in 2007 and 2008. That 2 years, they were not in the 200 even. Their ranking was 1,500 above, because due to the economy crisis. So what I'm trying to say, there is any university is not adapt to this criteria. It takes some time to back in the game. So it's a business. So back to the criteria, if you look at it closely, so what we are looking at, example like the citation per paper, right? Citation per paper is 10% here. So University Peradeniya, they scored 82 for the International Research Networking, 82, and 54 let me have a look on it. Yeah, 54.4, if I'm not mistaken. they score for the citation paper per faculty. So this is important thing to monitor. So how many publications you can push it forward, right? So move to the next slide, please. So back to the academic standard and reputations. So if you look at it, the academic standard and reputation is based on the survey. They have an academic survey. They carry out the academic survey. So 2011, not 2011, I would say that was the employer reputations. Employer reputation back to the 2011, the survey responses are 17,000. And 2021, employers' reputation is back to 50,000. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to scrutinize and weight to eliminate those bias. Because if you look at it, the top 10 universities are coming from US and the UK. So somebody can argue that, those academics can argue that there is no way we're going to jump into top 10. But those ranking, they also aware that. So they increase the weight, and they increase the survey responses to 50,000 to balance it. And back to the earlier, the academic survey. So academic survey, how they carry out by 100,000 individuals. So you can get those informations on the QS intelligence unit. So from there, there's a lot of information there. You can find out how they carry out this exercise. So then another thing is that, so back to the career aspect of graduates. So career aspect of graduates, they are looking at Fortune 500. So Fortune 500 companies, how many CEOs are coming from those universities? Are they coming from the local universities like Colombo or Peradeniya, etc.? Or they are coming from the MIT, or they are coming from Chicago University? So it's very important. So to maintain, connect with the, I mean, universities have to always have to connect with the industry. So then back to the University Malaya, I want to explain a little bit about the University Malaya, how they engage these exercise. Back to graduate programs, for instance, they have the incubator programs. They very closely work with the industry. Then the research work, mainly the final year projects for the BSc students, master students, they work very closely with the industry. They take their labs, probably a couple of modules from the, let's say, for instance, like a HIS solution, like a healthcare information systems. So these kind of systems, they collaborate with the universities. They build the labs. So students can hands-on, they can contribute, they can check their theories, whether it's working fine, or just to apply and see, or they can enhance it, whatever in the theoretical stuff. So there are always collaborations with the industry. Then back to the recruitment and international staff, right? I want to share some statistics with the University Malaya and I take it the University Peradeniya to compare it. Capacity-wise, both universities are 17,000 students. Then the 30%, I mean, University Malaya, 30% from undergraduates and 70% from postgraduates. Sorry, other way around. 30% from the postgraduates, 70% from the undergraduates. But University Peradeniya, 39% postgraduates, and remaining is undergraduates. But this is the interesting thing.
Dr. Ruwan, you have gone exceeding both your times together. So can you please speed up? We have to hand over to Dr. Veranja.
Sure, sure. So back to that, I just want to highlight that both universities are same, and the international students, both universities, we look at it, Peradeniya, we have only 130, but University Malaya, they have 3,000 number students, and international staff, we have only 9, and they have more than 650. So it's an international collaboration they're always looking at. So next slide. Yeah, over to you, Niresh.
Yes, one of the issues with citations and Sri Lankan universities is we need to clamp down on the amount of academic fraud, because if you have a lot of academic fraud in the universities, what's going to happen is soon as you put your dissertations and theses and so on online, you're going to get caught out, and that is going to ruin the reputation of the universities. So this is, we did a little survey on HitAd, and we found 11 instances of open advertising for academic fraud. Okay, you can get a dissertation done for 1,500 rupees. I mean, it's quite ridiculous. And this is where our educational authorities need to do some cracking down with the, talk to the CID, because it's punishable under the penal code, because this comes under cheating. So there you see education in the HitAd, and you can see even PhD, at the top bottom right-hand corner, people are talking about PhD work as well. So this is quite ridiculous. What in the world? It's beyond me how any university can accept that kind of shoddy work, because these are repeated assignments and dissertations and so on. Nobody is going to write a dissertation for 1,500. He's simply going to tell the same dissertation to 100 different students. So before we put all those online to be cited, we need to make sure these things are, taken taken down. Okay. The other thing is, in the COVID era, we've seen a lot of universities strengthening their distance learning, including Sri Lankan ones have been looking at online and distance learning. So that's one part, which again has to be strengthened. And let us leave you with this. Ruwan and I are both lecturers and academics, but when it comes to moving up the rankings, this is not something which can be left to academics and lecturers and professors. It has to be an integrated effort by the entire universities and the entire UGC and the entire system. So you need to have some marketers who will drive this, who will plan it out, drive it, and make sure that there are targets set, and that we can reach those targets, like the 10-year plan that Mr. Anura Dissanayake referred to. Okay, thank you very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Drs. Ruwan and Niresh. And I'm now quickly going over to Professor Veranja. He's already taken up 10 minutes of your time, but please go ahead and make your presentation. Hopefully wind up in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. I hope my slides are visible.
Here, you want to share the screen with us?
1 minute. It can be seen, right?
No, and the script is very small. You want to enlarge it, or you can just explain it as you go along, whatever you wish.
Yeah, okay. It's slightly better, I hope. I just want to start this with, thank you very much, Sujata, Tara, for inviting me. Glad to see you, Mr. Dissanayake. Although you have left the education or the higher education ministry, we wish you all the best in your new job, and glad that you are staying at the Education Commission appointed by the President. I just want to flash some numbers of recurrent budgets and capital budgets of the universities, 36 other educational institutes. The recurrent is about 45 billion rupees, and the capital comes to about 16 billion, and together taken, this is about 61 billion, and that amounts to over $300 million of expenditure. And if you are running a business worth 300 million, what's the first item that would be in your agenda? Would be, I've been a long-standing academic in the university system in Sri Lanka. Your job is to hire the best managers to run the institute, and that's where the rankings come from. Although the QS rankings don't say who is running the university, but those who run the university determine how the rankings are portrayed. So therefore, I would recommend that in Sri Lanka, the vice chancellors are appointed by a show of hands in the council. Probably one of the few countries in the world that they raise hands and appoint the vice chancellors. They ought to be appointed through competitive interviews, and top researchers and top accomplished academics must get into these points. If you do that, then the deans would raise their standards, because traditionally the deans have a higher probability of becoming vice chancellors. So I think we need to have a change in that. With the money we spend, although not adequate, we can increase our rankings. I believe strongly, and that's one of the things that I have realized over the years of my work here. Now, I'm asked to talk about research. The gross domestic expenditure, these are the numbers that I have, published by the National Science Foundation in 2017. It still hasn't gone up. Maybe it has gone up to little over 0.16, hovering around. Again, it goes up and down. Although the dollar amounts or the rupee amounts have increased over the years, it is not adequate, and the research output shows it. Although there are some bright spots, which I will talk about as I go along. Now, capital recurrent expenditure on R&D, capital stands at a low amount of about 3 billion, and recurrent at about 13 billion. And I think these numbers overlap with the numbers that I showed in the university expenditure. There is an overlap. This is the countrywide capital recurrent expenditure for R&D only. Universities do spend money on research, although that amount is not substantial. Gross domestic expenditure on R&D by sectors: government R&D institutes about 6 billion, higher educational institutes about 3 billion. You can see there is a disparity here. This number for higher educational institutes ought to be higher than that, because globally, most of the R&D and the innovation still take place within the universities, as opposed to even government research labs. So I think this number is a disparity and a mismatch. And the business and the private non-profit are at a low level. Now, research activities, if you look at it, for basic research, 26% at 4 billion. Applied research is the largest quantum of money at 8 billion, 50%. And experimental development, which is even not quite between, I mean, it is between basic and applied. I would define as this experimental research. So natural sciences attract about 3 billion, engineering and technology about 3, medical sciences 1.5. Numbers go down as we go into other disciplines. And distribution of R&D persons by sector, if you look at it, the government research institutes about 1,500, universities about 3,500, and the business is not insubstantial. at 725, if you look at it, and who are doing research of some kind. And these are the numbers we have. So this is what we have inside our closet, inside our cabinet. The number of R&D persons by sector, the total wealth of the country in terms of sciences. Now, male and female, natural sciences, there is sort of parity. All sectors, if you look at it, there is parity, although the number of females in recent times have increased. And very soon, my estimate would be that all state universities and private universities might have to put a cap of male-female ratio at 50%. Otherwise, female numbers will outnumber the males in the next 10 years in a dramatic fashion, in Sri Lanka at least. Educational qualifications, PhDs at half, females at half, roughly, little over half of the males. MPhils, there is some sort of parity, if you look at it. And at bachelor's level, you can see there is almost parity. In fact, the females are outnumbering the males. Yeah. So if you look at the researchers in science, male and female again, at the bachelor's plus postgraduate, the males outnumber females, and at the doctoral level, again, males outnumber 61 to 39%. And by age, if you look at it, over 60 male-female males, there are more males, and those numbers have improved dramatically. Between 21 and 30 years of age, they are almost equal, male and female. So the younger scientists, the gender imbalance has been addressed. If you look at this is R&D, and how much do we innovate? If you look at it, these numbers, unfortunately, the numbers become not visible. So the numbers are not to be seen there. The number of patent registration by resident applicants is about, I can't see it well, I can't see it at all. I believe it's the number that you see, probably around 200. But if you quickly go to the bottom to G, the number of publications by Sri Lankan scientists in SCI journals is currently at 400. And this number has improved over the years. And I work for the National Research Council as well, a commission member, which gives President's Award for scientific publications annually. And we can see the number of publications going up dramatically. And these are SCI publication journals. So if you look at the US statistics of per publications per $1,000 of R&D funding, Sri Lanka is doing quite well, actually. These numbers are coming from a very grossly inadequate input by the government into R&D. And this number will continue to improve as it is in 2017. I'm sure now we are over 600 papers per year. So considering that we have no more than 4,500 active scientists, of that, about half that publishing scientists, I think this number is quite reasonable. So the patents, if you look at it, the numbers of patents, mostly in drugs, cosmetics, and other related product developments. Process technology remains very popular in terms of process improvements and so on. Energy and generating devices and food and beverage technology is at the bottom of that list. SCI journal publications, medical and health sciences top the list, and they do get globally cited more than physical and engineering sciences, because Sri Lanka's medical practices mostly being tropical medical practices, the citations tend to be relatively higher than other sciences. Here it says physics, but I presume it is physical sciences, which includes chemistry, material science, and physics. Stands at about 100. Engineering, technology, sorry, I can't see the number, and the numbers go down as we go down the list in disciplines. The products, the innovation types, this is what basically brings the money if the products are exported, or generates money within the country if the products are commercialized. Relatively small numbers. And if I may remind some of you, Sri Lanka's high-tech exports out of our total exports, not in the slide, high-tech exports out of total exports is grossly inadequate number of 0.15%. Unless we don't improve this number to at least 10%, whatever the politicians tell us, we will find it difficult to get to an upper middle income country. Because it is these high-tech products whose margins are much higher than the products that we export, which are non-value added products, commodities. If you don't get out of this commodity mindset of exports, we are not going to make it to upper middle income country, notwithstanding the promises that the politicians make for us, particularly at elections. Just the postgraduate output is not significant. That's my conclusion. I have this one last slide to say that. Now, if you look at the PhDs that contribute to science, IT, medicine, engineering and architecture, and agriculture, if you look at this, you can see the number is about 2,500. Sorry, it's about 2,500 for any given year, and the chart up there shows you that it's the PhDs out of that is about 1.4%. These are 2018 statistics from the UGC handbook, and the numbers I know has not dramatically gone up in today's context. So 1.4%, the PhDs, out of which is about 40 PhDs a year we are producing, which is not enough in this country. You know, all great countries must produce their great PhDs, and if you go to India, the Indian Space Agency director is an Indian PhD, not a PhD from Cambridge. And we seem to be waiting for PhDs to come from abroad to fill the vacancies we have, which has not been a realized dream for the last 50 years in this country. They do come, but not in quantities we require. So this number has to go up from 40 to 400. But if you keep on producing PhDs, and if they don't find adequate employment, that is a problem also. I know that the numbers, somebody mentioned that there are 1 million foreign students, undergraduate included in the US, and I myself am a chemist, teach my chemistry special students who number about between 30 and 40 a year. After 2 years of graduation, 100%, virtually 100% of these kids end up in the US, never to return, or return insubstantially. So we do want them to come back, but then imagine if all of them were to 1 year, if they decide all of them, we are going to come back home this year, and that we don't have jobs to give for those influx of students who come in this country. So with that, at least a brighter looking statement that we need to improve this number, and compared to 10, 15 years ago, this number 40 is an improvement. It has doubled, but just doubling doesn't seem to be enough. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Prof. Veranja. I'm just immediately going to hand over to Sujata because we've just got behind time by 10 minutes, but I'm sure Sujata is going to be brief so that we can swing into the discussion at least by 4 o'clock. Sujata, over to you.
Thank you very much for all three speakers. This dialogue was structured with a particular question in mind. Let me just elaborate on that. But I thank the speakers for actually, giving us a sort of three different pieces. The question was really, I think it's there in the title also, expanding higher education opportunities is a imperative. It's a social imperative. We have set up some standard that those people who get 3 passes at this particular exam have to be given university positions, and it's a social norm. It's become a social norm. So it's a socio-political imperative. And Mrs. Dissanayake really explained, it's actually, I think it's a very practical way of going about that. But the problem is, we are not talking about quality. What's going to happen to quality when you expand? Obviously, resources are limited, and our economic crisis is looming. So it's going to take a toll on quality. And also, it has what we call a knock-on effect on school education. Because those who would go on to be good teachers, they would take a master's, some masters or something, and they would go on to teach in these colleges. So I think we really need to, while expanding higher education opportunities, we really need to think about quality. So that's why we looked at ranking, and something I got from talking to Niresh, actually in a previous conversation, was how important was the structuring of graduate education in University of Malaya for this purpose. Actually, Niresh can correct me later, but they really internationalized their programs. So that's why I asked Veranja to talk about research and graduate education. And last slide, we are producing only 40 PhDs per year, and I think. So some Niresh or somebody, he said, how that even some of the reputation of some of these PhDs, could go, would have a problem if this kind of plagiarism or kind of cheating that he thinks could be going on. So I'd just like to pose to the, discussion, how do we just maintain some quality in our higher education? With this expansion, universal higher education, obviously there's going to be resource limitations. So how do we just, maybe one idea I like to throw for discussion is, we just have select or let universities select themselves that, we are going to be a world ranked university, at least one university in this country. Then how should we go about it? Because once we set the standard, at least in one university or couple, then we get some sense of standard. Otherwise, we can be, a few years back, we tried to do a ranking of the universities here. And we used the reputation ranking, we did only the IT programs. It can be done, but I don't think I'm going to try that again. With this kind of expansion, it's going to be a really futile exercise. So how would we, with the expansion, how do we keep quality? So one idea I like to throw is, maybe we would go for, have a goal of at least 1 or 2 universities in the top rankings. And Veranja raised a very good point about management. And really, how do we, for that, we really need maybe in this task force that they can something to think about, particularly at the university level. Management is of course important, but some sort of management structure to reach that goal. Particularly the general goal would be, how do we maintain quality in light of this expansion? So I think I will stop there, and hopefully the conversation will go towards how we maintain quality while we expand opportunities. Thank you. I think, Tara, would that do?
Yes, I think that's fine, Sujata. So I'm just looking at the list, but I don't see a show of hands. So Sujata threw in the very important point, maintaining quality, the management of universities, which Professor Veranja raised, the appointment of vice chancellors, and therefore the deans, that will obviously bring in quality. and this huge issue of addressing plagiarism, academic quality, and thereby the reputation of the universities. Please raise your hands or unmute your mic if you want to enter into the discussion.
Could I speak? This is Cool. I think some of the data, first let me thank the speakers. Some of the data we may have to look at, because I know for sure science faculty itself produced 19 PhDs last convocation. That's only from science faculty itself. So that those numbers you really need to look at today, because we have science postgraduate institute, a number of other faculties. The Peradeniya also will be producing. So I think some of the data we may have to look at if we are going to take certain decisions. Thank you.
There's one other question that I also have to ask.
Who is speaking, please?
It's me.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Mr. Nigel, go ahead.
So one question that I just wanted to ask is there was this topic of discussion that came up about attracting international students to Sri Lanka. I was just wondering whether there was a possibility that Sri Lanka is actually considering, say, something like summer schools, which are usually done in like European nations, which is potential to actually, for one, attract international students and also build sort of relationships from the universities that they are coming from. Has that been like a topic of consideration in the recent past?
Anura, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, it's a good question. The one that I was really referring to, the free education zone, is it is just like Malaysia and many other countries open up with flagship universities to come and invest and cater for private opportunities of students in the region. What our roadmap is on two directions. One, the question raised is to have this summer programs and internships, and then having the collaboration within national university system. Yeah, there's a we have at the moment we have recommended each university to have at least 5% of international students in the intake, and we have given the universities to autonomy for universities to engage themselves to attract, but results are not very satisfactory, and due to various resource issues, based issues, and things like that. So therefore, this the task force had entrusted this task to UGC to make recommendations how to improve that and increasing that the percentage that we have allocated for each university, and in order to cater some of these issues. In fact, the University Act had been now there's a committee had been formulated in the bringing about necessary changes into the Act so that universities will be more autonomous, and then the role of UGC will be reduced to resource allocation, and the universities to come up and work independent as much as possible. So that to accommodate that part, we are making for national universities. And regarding this the special zone of 700 acres, we have identified, we acquired the land also actually at Millava in Horana area. That is to capture the growing middle income category of growing economies of regional and in the South Asian region and Indonesia, is mainly to capture. In fact, we had several rounds of discussions with the international universities, and particularly some of the Australian and Indian and Chinese education institutes through the embassies in Sri Lanka, where what we are trying to see is, as we know that to Western countries, there are limitations of getting a visa for the Muslim country students, so that so that we are trying to expand that opportunity and capture this segment, and the plan or the roadmap is to see that by 2028 to have 40,000 students to be attracted, and then the expectation, the long-term expectation is to replace this foreign earning from migrate to Middle Eastern segment of 8 billion US dollars to and this LASCOM, the computer-related or software industries contribution of 1.5 billion. So we are aiming to have by 2035 to have a $5 billion revenue form in education sector. So these are two different line of thinking. So someone will ask, many people had posed this question, so what is the benefit of this international free zone for local system? So this is, we will be, the proposal or the outline of the proposal is to see that, these universities will give opportunity of international collaboration of faculties of these international institutes with national universities. So the national universities collaboration or the faculty, invited faculties, and that opportunities will be increased, and our university faculties can have sabbatical opportunities in these international universities located in this particular zone. And then to open up 5% of this intake should be granted as scholarships to local university students, and that 5% portion will go to UGC, and UGC will give the choice of students for whether they like to take this facility among the highest ranking students. So so these are the proposed plans that were discussed by the UGC and the academics were engaged in.
Mr. Anura, just wanted to confirm, if I'm not mistaken, there was that in the budget speech, there was an allocation for something called the something regarding scholarships for educational excellence, if I'm not mistaken. Was that initiated, or if I'm not mistaken, that was not initiated, right?
It is actually first round of scholarships were we just completed this year's allocation of 5,000 opportunities, right? And for that we have selected, there were 7,000 applicants were applied, and we have selected already 5,000 out of this year's lot. But from next year onwards, we are expanding that to 20,000 scholarship opportunities, and not limiting to state, not limiting to university, but even for professional institutes like chartered and other avenues also. So this is already in operation now.
Okay, right. Thank you. Dr. Sujata, I just wanted to clarify with Dr. Ruwan. So one thing that he had brought up in his presentation was in terms of improving the overall rankings of universities was to strengthen English and academic writing skills. So I just wanted to confirm whether this was something that should, or just rather shouldn't it be initiated a bit before university education in itself? Because say students who might have done English only as a second language might not necessarily perform well, or would struggle in terms of coping with English language at say an undergraduate level, right? So do you feel that might be more advisable to sort of start off at an earlier stage than during the undergraduate program?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So answer to that, right? I can give you the Malaysian context and even Singapore, etc. So basically, they allow students to go in first, right? There's two ways we can fix this issue. One thing, as you know, A-levels and once you come to bachelor's, there's a huge gap because the writing style difference, the way of you presenting your research difference is totally different ballgame. So to fix this, one thing that basically, if you apply to the US or any UK universities, you have to go through the TOEFL or IELTS or whatsoever English standard exams, right? You have to score 6.5 or 7, right? So basically, you have to establish some sort of English exams to get the all the students must go through this exam. Is one thing. It's a criteria to say that this student is qualified to going through these courses. Is one thing. Second, it's not fulfilled the academic writing. Academic writing, you have to go through the technical process, because it's a technical writing. So you should know example of structure of the research paper, what to write and do and don'ts, and your language, how they construct the arguments and etc. How to conduct the proper research, then etc. So basically, these all are carried out by the universities. Let's example like postgraduate institutes. So they have to carry out these programs like research methodology, right? It's a compulsory subject. Then the academic writing is a compulsory something. So it's a series of I would say exercise that have to carry out by the universities, right? So on top of that, Dr. Sujata mentioned that quality, we shouldn't drop the quality. So it's a very good point is that masters and PhD graduates must publish their papers. So for instance, like University of Malaya, they have the ISI paper. You must publish one ISI paper. ISI means International Scientific Index. So they have a Q1 to Q4. So at least you must publish Q3 or Q2 paper. Then the PhD. PhD, you must publish 2 papers before you go for your soft copy submissions. So it's a very intensive process, right? So every research, at the end of the day, it's not just you get the certificate. Whatever you publish, whatever you delivered, end of the year, let's say even the bachelor's level, it can be published because it's your own content. Then example like earlier, Ms. Niresh talked about it, the plagiarism, right? So there is ghost writers are there to write the assignments and the theses. You can easily capture those by one thing is publications. Secondly, you have a lot of softwares that like a Turnitin. It's compulsory for the academician to go through that process. You can submit to your assignments to the Turnitin. Easily can capture similarity level. So similarity level below 20% you must maintain. So something like that. Then back to the English writing. So it is important. So it's one of the mandatory thing. Example like Latin America, they won't be able to go to the top 200 even the universities. Tough challenge because the reason is language barrier because of the Spanish, right? But for us, we know that Sri Lankans, I would say most of the students, like 70-80%, they can speak, they can write the language. Only thing is academic writing. You have to improve the academic writing. It must be fixed in the bachelor levels. It's not being fixed by the master level. I totally agree. We have a process. 2 steps as a summary. It must be in the entry. We have to do something for the entry. So most of the universities that carry out that exams, even though you are in the first 2 semesters, you must pass that exam unless you are out of the university. So we must maintain that. We have to start somewhere. Yeah. Is there any other thing?
Thank you, Dr. Ruwan. So I do agree with your point where you, like you mentioned, like IELTS and TOEFL scores, and then where you need to pass you need to pass certain courses that are set at your undergraduate level, like academic writing and so on. So when you in terms of universities where they usually have like a requirement of say like 6.5 on IELTS, and usually I would say IELTS does test you a bit on your sort of academic writing capability as well. So my initial question was students who are coming in, not really progressing on to master's level, but those who are coming in from A levels to their undergraduate, like, is there, or do you see evidence that people are performing at that level at a 6.5 minimum, or are there people who are substantially performing below that? Because if it's below that, that might be a bit more of an issue, right? In terms of how we are going to get them up to like a acceptable academic writing level.
Yeah, so back to that, right? Basically, the local universities, because like Asian universities, they are not really practicing, let's say, unless it's the international students. International students, to pass the exam is compulsory. But the locals, right? So this example, Sri Lankans applying for the Sri Lankan university. So they are entered to university. They have to have some sort of local exam, English exam to pass that. That means they have some sort of percentage to achieve. So I wouldn't know how it's working in Sri Lanka, right? So I think that one probably others can help me on that. So whether is it established or not? If not, I think we have to look into it.
Yeah, just to add on that, Dr. Danu, just to complement that part, we have recognized this issue, and then we also observed the opportunity window of opportunity of incorporating this part, and from next academic year, where the government is now we are designing the programs from next academic year, that is next intake, the 2021 intake, university intake. The university students immediately after advanced level, irrespective of whether they are getting into university or not, approximately 180,000 students who are qualifying will be eligible to two intensive courses. One is on English, the other one is on ICT. So these exams are now we are developing the program with the collaboration with the British Council on getting this the program content of this English program, and then with ICT component we are discussing with ECTA and SLASCOM, and then trying to bring about some kind of international program. We are talking many options like ICDL for education or various other products, so that that from next 2021 we will be offering for every advanced level qualified student to apply for this two courses prior to getting into universities of state, non-state, or even to any other vocational streams.
Thank you. Januka has been with his hand raised, and thereafter I think Maneshka had a question in the chat. So I would like to first go to Januka and thereafter to Maneshka, please.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you to everyone who have presented today. Very insightful information. Just a quick comment about what Niresh and Ruwan talked about, getting into this grand challenge of getting into the top 100 universities. Now, if you look at these rankings, the binding parameter is the quality of research. All these universities are producing some really high quality research, and it's the binding parameter of all these rankings. And if you want to become a really high quality research center, now Niresh said that the universities should correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned that our universities should be centers of revenue, but I kind of disagree with that. Instead, none of these universities, high-ranking universities, have become, have snuck into the top 100 by positioning themselves as, centers of revenue. Instead, they have positioned themselves as centers of research excellence. So the question is, there's a huge problem that we have to solve if we are really seriously thinking about sneaking into the top 100, top 200, top 500 even. That's the money problem, right? I think Anura mentioned that the government has earmarked something like 150 million US dollars over the next 10 years to be distributed among 25 universities. 10 plus 10 new universities and 15 already existing universities. And that's about $6 million per university if we assume that, this is divided among the universities evenly. But that's the amount, that's like 50% of the amount that Singapore put in to a single department to get it up into the top 20. That is the Earth Observatory associated with NTU. And that department was started in 2009 and became snuck up into the top 20 within 11 years. And that's, they poured in something like somewhere around 15 to 20 million $. That's for a single department. So whatever said and done, at the end of the day, it's a money problem that we have. And if we can solve that, I don't know how we are going to solve that. I'm not sure by improving and increasing the number of universities we are going to get there. But one thing I know for sure, that increasing the number of universities might, can put a real dent on the culture of ragging, perhaps. But in terms of improving quality of research, I'm not sure by increasing the number of universities whether we are going to get there. So this is a question that I have. How are we going to solve this money problem going forth?
A quick input from Anura on the funding aspect, very relevant point. You want to make a quick input, Anura?
I agree with him.
and
Yeah, but I mean, this is we have to see. I mean, the country's finance problem for next 3 years, and then this post-COVID economic impact on the economy. We will have some challenges. So even though we have great plans, we have to pace out. Actually, it's not that what I mentioned for that investment that we are doing is not for 10 years. That is that investment that we have assured investment is before 2023. That these investment $150 million will be invested within next 2 years, and then we will be finalizing and getting the opening of these facilities 2023. So that's a medium-term investment plan of the government for next 3 years. Actually, still is insufficient. Yeah.
Will the ADB $50 million come into the international education zone?
No.
Okay.
No. It is only for this district. We call it district high-tech universities. These are career-based, market-oriented type of programs will be conducted initial 5 years, and then we will be expanding based on the supply and demand. That is nothing to do with that.
Okay.
I really welcome the idea that you're thinking of starting an international hub, academic hub in Horana. But what's the purpose of that, Anura, if you can elaborate?
Yep.
Because one thing I found is that I was educated at the University of Peradeniya. I remember once talking to Professor Karunarathna once, like 18 years ago. But since then, I haven't been in the country, but since then I've tried a few times to start collaborations with people in Sri Lanka, but they're so resistant to starting collaboration. I'm totally flustered on that front. But if you can facilitate somehow now, as Professor Karunarathna said, people who go abroad don't come back because for various reasons, there are not enough research opportunities in Sri Lanka. But one way to circumvent this problem is to be able to facilitate collaborations between different departments, universities. But I don't see a way out of this problem of not being able to collaborate with people. So I think I really welcome your idea of starting an international hub. But I'm not exactly sure what the role of that particular, endeavor.
Yep. Okay. The purpose of this hub, particular hub, or the free education zone, is to capture the growing demands of South Asian countries, especially Bangladesh is growing. The economy is growing very fast, high number, 180 million population, and then and some of the Indian middle income countries, and particularly Indonesia. These students who are growing the middle income category families demand to go to Western countries. There's issue of getting a visa for some of these country students. So that is why this we had the few Australian universities is already negotiating with us. So they will be having their facilities here. So it is actually it's not for the local crowd. It is to create a university city, and where the students, rather than going to Australia or any other destination like what they have done in Malaysia. So this facility will be aiming to capture 40,000 student intake over the years. In fact, already we have 5 universities that initially shown their interest, and we are working and we are discussing, but it's a project that is coming as a private-public partnership, infrastructure development. That whole area, a township has to be created and things like that. So we just acquired the land, and now BOI and UDA and Ministry of Higher Education is working on the way forward. So this is to like Australia is making their foreign exchange through education significantly. So Sri Lanka's foreign earning segment, to introduce this new segment for next skills decade. So this is the direct, but we will get many indirect impacts. But something like collaborating with local universities and faculties of these international universities, so that will help to improve the quality of national universities. Since the competition is just next door, you will tend to improve our system. So these are the indirect benefits, but this is mainly to cater the growing demand of the South Asian region student community.
Thank you. So I'm in the faculty international committee here at the University of Melbourne. So if there's anything that we can do to assist that endeavor, I'm more than happy to help you out.
Great. Actually, yes, that sounds good. Actually, Tanishka is the Australian embassy's focal point, is working with us. In fact, we were, if not for Corona, we were planning to have the symposia in August, actually. So we had to postpone. So in fact, Australian government pledged us that they will bring potential 10 universities for that discussion forum, where the president was to make the keynote speech, and also I'm sure we will be in touch with you. This is we are thinking of few great universities in Australia also. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Manishka. Can you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. My questions are rather brief. Very quickly, what is our publishing statistic among tenured faculty in Sri Lanka? And also, what is the incentive for graduate students to publish in peer-reviewed journals?
Sujata, you want to answer that question?
I think Veranja would be better.
Okay.
Veranja, Upul Sonadra is in the audience. Maybe he can tell us. Veranja, we'll ask Veranja. Please.
Citation, if you look at it, although not a perfectly reliable indicator of citation impact, the H index, that if you look at the H index of Sri Lankan scientists by Google Scholar, which I call the poor man's H index, because it doesn't cost you any money to make public your H index. is that if you count researchers whose H-index is over 30, you can count them in your 10 fingers. Okay, but the researchers between 20 and 30, you will have another 20 or so, maybe 25, maybe even 30. So that's a citation impact, roughly, of our scientists. There are a number of reasons for this. We discussed the inadequacy of funding, which is woefully inadequate, but we seem to do better per dollar per capita investment into science in terms of publications than perhaps even Western countries. We seem to do better, and that's what is shown, that we publish annually in SCI journals. This is science, IT, technology, engineering, and agriculture, and allied areas, not in arts and education. In fact, those numbers that Upul Sonnadara was disagreeing with, they're basically those. I'm not talking about education and so on, and these numbers come from the UGC handbook, and I cannot, unfortunately, rely on anecdotal data that I also have from University of Peradeniya. So I have to go by a published source. So if the published source is wrong, so be it. So in fact, the PhD students now, in whatever capacity over the years, I have also supervised about 20 PhD students, and I have more in the pipeline. So I think I'm qualified to talk about that's a substantial amount for a Sri Lankan scientist. Well, I've gotten at least on average 3 to 4 international publications per student on average, sometimes higher. So currently, University of Peradeniya, I'm sure the same is true for Colombo as well and other universities. You cannot graduate, you cannot get a PhD if you haven't published at least 2 papers. For MPhil, you need 1 paper. Otherwise, they won't transfer you to a PhD. In Sri Lanka, first you register for an MPhil and then you're transferred to a PhD. So that transfer doesn't take place if you haven't got 1 paper. So I think the checks and balances are good, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And if I may just briefly touch on Januka's comment about why Sri Lankan scientists are so reluctant to enter into foreign collaborations. A number of reasons are there, but I think there are those scientists who have entered into foreign collaboration. My talking about myself is not a statistic, but at least in my case, I have been a visiting professor going every year to University of British Columbia in Canada for the last almost 18 years. If I have not been going recently, only because I haven't had time. So there are those, but Sri Lankan scientists are cash strapped. There is no travel money for Sri Lankan scientists. That's one thing we don't have. So to maintain collaborations, you need reciprocal traveling. Sri Lankans are unable to find travel money, and they can do many things, but travel money isn't there from most of the funding sources. They'll give you research money, inadequately, of course, but travel money almost never, or very little. So you can't maintain, very friendly, generous collaborations without some form of access to travel money, and that's something that I could talk about. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I now go to, there are 2 hands that are raised, Mr. Mahindathapattu and thereafter Mr. Tilak Silva. Can we go in that order, please?
Thank you. I'm Mahinda from Ruwan.
Yes.
I'm going to make 2 points. One
yes.
thing regarding this why our academic performance, research publication performance is poor. I think in Sri Lanka, the lack of research performance-based incentive systems for the university academic is one reason. I think maybe 5-6 years back, there was a suggestion, a proposal to introduce that kind of H-index-based incentive system at UGC level, but that did not work out. I know we are getting little research fund and resources are low, but still if there is that kind of research performance-based incentive system, surely our system will make that little resources more efficiently to make publications anyhow. That's one point I want to make. And other thing, now I think the government intention of increasing the expanding opportunities for higher education is highly commendable, but I doubt that setting up of universities at different localities, 10 districts, that would be the most efficient or the best way of achieving that task, because I think, or I suspect that would be that would resource utilization efficiency point of view, that would not be good for not only in financial but other resources as well. Surely we could have used resources, so available resources, more efficiently if we ask or provided that funds to existing universities to increase their capacity, expand their capacities. Now, to get a tangible output from that newly established universities, that will take at least 2 decades, I think. I mean, even some of the universities which started, I mean, local universities started some, say, 10, 15 years back. See the ranking of those universities. They are very far behind in the ranking. So I think that idea is not that good, and there are much better means of achieving that government's good intention. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the two first point, can Veranja answer that? Research incentives, that was his first point. Are there enough incentives for academics to take high quality research?
Mr. Atmath, you talked about the index-based system at the universities. In fact, I was one of the authors of that proposal. UGC issued a circular to rank university academics and, of course, other scientists in other sectors as well, if they are willing to participate, based on the H-index into a tier system from 1 to 4 tiers. But unfortunately, the Vice Chancellors have never championed this, right? And they have languished where they are, and they themselves, probably due to inadequate H-indexes, they have not championed this. So I think the point that I raised earlier, we need managers who, university should be research intensive, research based, research informed. All of those things is a university, and all those 3 criteria ought to be the manager's vision and the mission. So unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Incentives, there is a research allowance that they give, but unfortunately, 100% of the academics receive the research allowance, and we know that way less than 100% do research in the university. So, but then they do get the incentives. We are probably one of those very few countries where our teachers' union participates in the writing of the promotion scheme. Without their input, the promotion scheme doesn't become reality. That I find very humorous, to say the least. That's like, I have a number of examples, but they don't look nice, so I won't mention them. Get the input of academics about their own research performance and promotions. It wasn't like this. The universities 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I became an associate professor, system changed, but I did become an associate professor on the old promotion scheme, where to become an associate professor, you needed a minimum of 15 publications, and you had to wait for another 5 years to apply for a professorship. Today, everybody becomes professor in one shot. No one becomes an associate professor. And then the second time you become a professor, you need another 15 papers. So a minimum of 30 papers you need to become a professor, and many didn't make it, and they ended up being readers or associate professors by seniority. That changed. In 1997, the whole thing changed, and the unions were they became the writers and the authors of the promotion scheme. Okay. So I leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Veranja. The second part of Mahinder's question was I think I want to address it to Anura, because he says he's trying to compare the two systems. Is it worth investing in more universities like the way you described, or is it better to pump in money to the existing universities for infrastructure, quality of staff, etc.? Which is the better of the two options?
Yeah. The government's mandate for next 10 years is based on different two different avenues. One is to increase the quality of existing universities, and while increasing the intake. That is one intention. That is for the 15 universities, we'll be making investments on improving the quality and then increasing sizably. That is from 32,000 intake from today to 45,000 by 2030. And the other one is to supply the demand from the industry for some of these growing segments. We have to make sure the accessibility of avenues for students. So these 10 universities are actually aiming to increase the accessibility of higher education, and then which are directly involved into the industrial demand. So this particular universities I mentioned, three different faculties. One is ICT faculty, other one is technology faculty, the other one is biotechnology faculty. This is to cater the growing demands of local industry and the opportunities in the ICT sector in the region. And then these courses are also designed now. At the moment, UGC is designing in a different manner, where these district universities, students are coming in the first year and second year. End of the second year, we are awarding them with higher diploma. And then third year, these students are assigned to various industries, and then biotechnology students into farming and various opportunities. And then third year of these students will be full-time on internship type of place where they will be working, and then that credit will be counted and then be exempted from the third year, and then they'll come back to the university on the fourth year. So this is two different objectives to be achieved from these two programs. So I agree with him. We need to improve the quality, for which we will be intensifying our investments, both the capital and then the quality inputs. In fact, I must mention, I was earlier mentioning on the capital investments on the capital investment, but for the soft investments, we are apart from treasury-owned funds, we work under the World Bank. Ahead program is mainly on improving the quality of education in university system. So there's two different programs are going simultaneously.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Mr. Tilak Silva, you've had your hand raised for a while. Sorry about that. And then we have Niresh after that. Mr. Tilak, are you with us? Mr. Tilak, can you hear us? Okay, Niresh, can I go over to you and then you can return to...
Yes, Dr. Tara. Just a little note on comment on the revenue side of it. Januka is absolutely right. You can't earn research-related revenue without becoming a center of excellence first. So you need to get your standards up, and then of course the revenue would come. That's research related. On the other hand, what Mr. Anura Dissanayake was talking about, the focus on marketing to the Bangladeshi students, that is marketing to a niche market. So you're not looking at research related, you're looking at, there is an opportunity there, a market opportunity. And I think the government is looking at earning revenue by simply educating those people, because they are having issues in getting visas into Western countries. Is one reason. So you can actually attract foreign students. I think some of the institutes in Sri Lanka do so already. Some of our universities do as well. A few Maldivians. I know the Sri Lankan Airlines Aviation College is attracting quite a lot of Omanis and Maldivians for aviation-related training and so on. So it's a matter of finding a niche market as well, and not simply, it's two things. You want your local universities to up their research capabilities and become centers of excellence. And on the other hand, you can look for your niche markets as well, so that you can sort of earn some revenue on that side as well. Thanks.
Thanks. Mr. Tilak, you're back. You had a question and we look for you. Sorry,
Can you hear me?
Your sound is very, very indistinct and a bit distorted. Can you
hear me?
No.
Hello? Can you hear me? I see.
Yes.
Net connection and join you. Hello?
Can
Is
you?
it okay?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, please
You
go
can
ahead.
hear me?
Yes.
All right. My question is to Dr. Mr. Anura Dissanayake. This is with regard to, I'll give you 2 examples of KDU and SLINTEC, free-levied 4-year degree, engineering degree programs. So when this, which has been actually pushed by Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, the Engineering Council Act. So this act prohibits this graduates from these 2 universities, KDU and SLINTEC, practicing engineering. So, both these programs are UGC approved programs. So I don't know how the government, previous government introduced this act. How they could introduce an act, violating the rights of the people who have been this opinion.
Anura, can you answer that, please?
Yeah. Yes, this particular 2 institutes issue has been discussed at the SCACA. There's a discussion forum with SLANCI and the Ministry, the Higher Education Ministry regarding this, and these are not only on Sri Lanka Institute of IESL and Engineering Council. This issue is even with the legal profession also. Now there's a issue with getting the approval of this professional councils. And these are the challenges that we are facing, and we are having several. We had several discussions. Already we had discussions with legal professional issues. Even with we had the discussion with the Chief Justice also, as since he's a trustee of the Mahapala Trust Board. Mahapala Trust had made the seed investment on SLIT in Malabar. So this particular issue not only related to engineering but for other professions also. So we are working on, we are discussing to come out with some solutions. Yeah, this is an issue. Yeah, we are very cautious of it, and we are trying to come out with some kind of solution.
Thanks very much. Januk has his hand raised. Before that, can I just ask a quick question? What I had said at the very outset, we didn't touch on, Anura. I think if you can clarify, you talked about the new plans for students after they enter the university, the 2nd year, 3rd year, how they will be encouraged to take up different fields like biotech and so on. But what we didn't...
Thanks a lot.
But what we didn't discuss was...
At the same time,
Yeah, can you just give me a minute, please, Mr. Tilak, till I finish this? Yeah, so what we didn't discuss was actually to bridge the gap between the school and the university entrance. If just 50% of the students who are doing their A-levels, only 50% are conversant in science-based subjects, how would you put your plan into operation if a big chunk of the students who come to university are actually arts and humanities based?
Right. Okay. This is a very good question. In fact, as the recommendation of the Presidential Task Force, we have observed now this formation of Ministry of Education, combining higher education, general education, vocational education, science and technology, and early childhood. Now it's a 5 ministries combined and formed as a Ministry of Education. This is number one, to mitigate this difference silo-based approach. We think, this one, your part is over, then the next part is taking another years to absorb, and that this will lead every student approximately 24 to 36 months of their time is being lost because of these gaps. So one unified ministry will have now, there will be the curriculum development, there will be curriculum development center will be formed, and then the curriculum will be across board from early child, from secondary to tertiary. And however, and then we will be since it's one ministry, it's the mandate of that ministry to see that student is going through the full cycle. So some of these issues will be solved. But however, the university intake from the advanced level results, release from the results to that part, is generally taking, it's about 6. We are trying to minimize to 6 months. That gap we cannot fulfill because due to various reasons, processing time of Z scores and things like that, takes some time. And so that even for that 6 months period, we are trying to inculcate these bridging courses of English and IT. The students are not necessarily coming to universities because we are granting blanket opportunity for all 180,000, so that all these computer learning centers across the country, and which thanks to your time, during your time we had a rollout plan of making availability of these computer labs across the country. There are 3,000 universities, school systems is having some form of facilities for blended learning for these students to come in the afternoons and weekend. So that gap will be fulfilled. Even that 6 months, we don't want the students to be at large, so they will have continuous process of learning. So did I answer your question, or did I?
Partly, but primarily my question was in terms of the subject combinations. The advanced level students, as you know, the advanced level classrooms, only about 50% are equipped to teach, with teachers plus other facilities.
Okay, yeah, okay. Right. Now, now, as you know, that at present we have 335. Nearly 300, less than 350 national schools with full curriculums. So that the government had taken a decision to expand this number to 1,000. That is to see that at least three full-fledged full curriculum schools per AGA division, and then we are starting from next year 124. Additional national schools where no national school is available in a particular divisional secretariat area. So that will expand the accessibility for students to have a wider choice. And then, as you know, the new stream, the technology stream, which was introduced, aiming to reduce this 52% of intake for liberal arts stream to gradually minimize to 30%. So that is the roadmap. So it hopefully during this skills decade, we have named 2030, we will be able to manage to reach some manageable levels. That is the plan.
Thank you very much, Chandra. We have again Januka and Niresh whose hands have been raised. Yes, Januka, you want to make a quick intervention? We have 15 minutes more, by the way.
This is going to be really quick. This is going to be really quick. Again, to Anura, I'm burdening Anura quite a bit today. So the question is, this is regarding the international hub that you're going to start probably in the next 10 years or so. Are you expecting political barriers? I'm asking this question because we have a political culture of resisting everything private in the university space. So are you expecting any political barriers, and how do you plan to overcome that?
In higher education area, even now, apart from 15 state universities, national universities, there are 21 private universities are in operation. Private in the sense, some of them are 100% owned by the ministry, that is NSBM and NIBM, and then like in the non-profit institution like Malambe SLITEC. So generally, this resistance for privatization of education is focused more on general education, not on higher education. While we are assuring to double the national university intake, we are making this investment so that those zone is not, it is only for foreign students, and expatriate Sri Lankans are only eligible to come and study there. So it's a different segment. There's nothing to do with the local, opportunity of privatization of local. That is two different. These are three different products that we are coming up. One is state universities increasing the capacity to 60,000 over the next 10 years, and then increasing the private universities in Sri Lanka to expand their capacity from 23,000 to 50,000. And then another segment is to attracting foreign students to Sri Lanka. This is merely a foreign exchange earning that we have tax. We have enough money to tax to invest on state education, so the government coffers need taxation, so that we need revenue from one segment also. So there's three different products that we are talking about. Line, not products, different investment plans.
Thank you. Januka, is that all for your?
Yeah, that's all. Thanks, thanks, Anura.
Yes, Niresh.
Just one comment. With all this expansion of new universities and so on, it's important to keep in mind that the entire education system needs to match the requirements of the country in the degrees that are conferred, the numbers of degrees. We have to properly evaluate what the country requires and make sure that not just our universities, but even at A levels, our schools need to, put the number required by the country. And obviously, we have to take into consideration the migration, the brain drain as well into that. So that, otherwise we're simply not going to have enough people here to develop the country.
Thank you. Dinesha has left a question in the chat. Would you like to read it out to the forum, Dinesha?
Yes, Doctor. My question is, most of the PhD students in Sri Lanka, they are moving to other countries for their higher education. Actually, when you think about them, it is a disadvantage for the country because they move in and they settle there. We can't get their benefits to the country. What is the country strategic plan to keep them in the country and at the national level, and to provide the better service for their higher education within the country?
Who would like to answer that?
I'll take a shot, and I think Veranja also should. When way back when I was doing my PhD, we were all very nationalistic and want to do the PhD here. And I'm glad my professors just said, advice, just go. I think most important is whether we have create the environment for them to come back. I think that's more important. So that's my response. Veranja, what do you think?
You're on mute. Please.
I did not hear the first part, but I presume from Sujata's response that the question was about why these PhDs are not coming back. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, it's multifaceted. The answer to that, the reasons are multifaceted. A, we are a third world country. And even as a grad student, if you go to the US, you earn a dollar-rupee conversion income of way more than what you have earned here as a BSc employee in a private sector company, including MAS, who pays a lot of money, right? They earn more money. For the first time in their lives, they are able to buy a car and drive it to places that they have never seen before. So that's an attraction. And after they do their PhDs, if they have good postdocs, at least in the sciences, they can get gainful employment. And I have no issue with Sri Lankan students who don't come back if you are doing good jobs in the US or anywhere else, because you're contributing to the planet. But there are those who are just being postdocs for life. And then you live your basic life as a postdoc until you retire. I mean, those people ought to think twice of staying abroad. To bring them back, I think Thailand model, if you follow the Thailand model, Thailand will send you, now, Howard will take you with a good BSc if you pay money to do a PhD, right? They'll take you. So Thailand will locate their prospective PhD students in the top universities in the US, but with the proviso that you've got to return. If you don't return, your parents are bonded, not you. Your parents have to pay with their meager savings that if you abscond the bond. Thirdly, of course, they give you gainful employment after they return. None of which we are able to execute in this country. The university bonds for these employees are very meager, flimsy legal documents, which they flout. You can't get them back. And even if you do get them back, we can't give them jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have just about 9 minutes before we close. And I'm going to ask Sujata to give the final 5-minute comment. But before that, I'm going to break with tradition and ask Veranja to please, going by what was discussed around the table and being very, very fortunate to have Mr. Anura Dissanayake, who is still involved in the Presidential Task Force, which is a decision-making platform here. I would like you to directly address Mr. Anura Dissanayake and share what you would think the Presidential Task Force should focus on in terms of this subject, based on your own thoughts, plus whatever was discussed during the last 1.5. 5 minutes.
Are you telling me, Tara?
Yes, you first. Okay. Putting you on the spot.
Very good, very good.
All right. So I think, a lot to discuss. And if I may say so myself, I was probably the most mischievous here in trying to question the existing methods of operating in the academia here, right? We need to appoint good managers. We need to appoint good deans. We need to appoint, because we are spending $350 million. If each one of you have a company of $350 million, lo and behold, you will hire the best managers that your money will get you, right? So we got to get the best managers, which we are not. I mean, it's an open secret. Elephant in the room, but no one talks about it. I talked about it, right? I have no issue with my vice chancellor if he thinks that I have offended him. I have no issue with that, because this is all collegial dialogue. And this is how I feel about things. And I've been around for way more than most people here in this country in academia. Number two, I think the government's waking up to, particularly during the last 8 months, when Mr. Anura Dissanayake was part of the Higher Education Ministry, it had woken up earlier, but then there was a particularly poignant mindset where we cannot, based on the Saubhagya going forward, we cannot have the state universities to give the adequate numbers of undergraduate students that this country needs going forward, nor technically educated, vocationally trained NDT type graduates. This system cannot, the state university system cannot do it. So they have woken up to the fact that the private education system must contribute significantly under control guidelines. The operative words is control guidelines, where they are expected to excel as much as the private university system, hire PhDs wherever they can, don't take cheap pathways to deliver degrees, but continue to hire PhDs and be challenged to pay the state sector salaries that the government is paying university employees, which is quite substantial in today's context in Sri Lanka, to the private sector staff as well. In addition to that, the state sector staff receives sabbatical leave, unlimited conference leave, vacation leave, you name it, but the private sector cannot offer any of this. I think they should seriously think how they can incentivize their recruited staff to the same degree, at least in spirit, if not in letter, that the state universities are providing. No one really underestimates, no one should underestimate the money quantum spent by the state universities to train their staff at the PhD level, which the private universities have not spent. They will recruit a PhD who has gone out and come. State university will spend money to send a student out, give 4 years, 5 years leave and take them back. So those amounts are uncounted for. No one really takes that into consideration, that the state universities spend way more money than the private sector in keeping a quality staff intact. But at the same time, I think we discussed that our research ought to empower the academic culture in this country. We need to understand, I'm saying the H-index based system that I was part of and the UGC introduced. Look, it doesn't apply to me, it doesn't apply to anyone over 50, but it ought to apply for young PhDs between the ages of 30 and 50. We need to know how they are progressing. When I mentor young academics, my first argument with them is, please publish your first 10 papers. Academics are a priesthood. We are no different from priests. We get paid little, but we do something we really love. So in order to become an ordained priest, you got to publish 10 papers. Then only you become an ordained priest and reach the point of no return. You cannot go back to civilian life after that. So, we got to encourage our young academics. We are talking, the entire forum technically is for those kids who are between 30 and 50. Even for those who are 50, I still call them kids, but that's because who I am, right? So, but I think, this forum that we discussion ought to apply mostly to that age bracket, which is our nursery, which is our wealth in terms of in academia in this country. How do we get those between 30 and 50 to become better academics than we have ever been? Otherwise, this whole discussion of getting one world ranking university in Sri Lanka is a pipe dream. If you don't get our 30 to 50-year-old scientists to the forefront, mentor them, get them go places. Thank you so much for all this. I think we have a very fruitful, diverse discussion of opinions. And I think although Sri Lanka is spending little on research, I think in heart we exceed global expectations in our publications. We do publish a lot for the money that is spent. Not compared to India, of course, we can't even compare. But gross domestic expenditure on R&D. I know the National Research Council receives about 250 million rupees annually for research grants, which is a little over $1 million. The National Science Foundation receives a similar amount. So this together taken, it's about 3 million. But that's the main funding agencies, in addition to CARP, which is the Agriculture Research Institute. But then we know that the agriculture number of publications are much less than in science and technology. So for $3 million, we publish 500 papers. Not a bad record. I mean, let's be honest about it. Not a bad record. Universities do add to that. They do give a little money out of their kitties, 500,000 rupees per young scientist and so on. They do add, but that can augment the money that they get from NRC and NSF. So I think, the future is very bright. If this quantum of money were to double, we would produce 2,000 papers a year, which is something that we can all smile at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veranja. So Sujata, over to you for the final take-home message. Anura, I hope you're there still and listening. Yes, Sujata, you're on mute still.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, this conversation was initiated because of the concern about quality. Expansion is fine, we can understand. And I think what I heard today really sort of confirms that, and particularly makes me worry that, are we going to focus on brick and mortar, more and more brick and mortar, 20 more universities, that's more construction. And this, Januka raised a very question, what's the objective of this international hub? I think that's something we really need to examine. And I think I hope, I'm really glad Mr. Dissanayake is going to continue, because I hope they will initiate a conversation on this. Because, and Veranja talked passionately about the 30 to 50-year-old our nursery. We put the word world-class university, that's a sort of a rallying point. If that's then that will focus our attention. Okay, what do we have to get there? I hope the Education Task Force will take that into account and reconsider these issues. Particularly the governments can come up with various ideas in their manifestos, but sometimes we have a responsibility to slightly steer them towards something else, a little bit different. I mean, what's the point, if you just implement what's in a manifesto? So I really hope this group of people, I'm so glad Veranja, Upul Sonadar was there from Colombo, Mr. Mahinda Atupattu from Ruwan, and I'm sure Januka will engage with us. I think we really, Tara, we need to push forward this research and graduate education component.
We had several deputy vice chancellors also with us, which they didn't
I see. Right. Yeah, because I think it's very popular to talk about getting more and more students opportunities. But the quality issue, I think, we need to push, and I hope you all will join with us. And I hope Mr. Dissanayake also will help us take that message to this task force. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, everybody, for the participating. Special thank you to our speakers, Mr. Anura Dissanayake, obviously, Drs. Ruwan and Niresh, and Professor Veranja, and for all of you for having participated. And I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody felt very much enriched than when we started this conversation. And as Sujata said, please stay connected. We'll be in touch with you all. Thank you so much.